So to begin, we're going to bring up Wolfram Alpha, kind of show you guys how to use this. Alright, you can just type it right in the front here. If you're working in Chrome, it'll bring it right up, www.wolframalpha.com. You can type it in just like that and bring it up. You can also go to Google search, more rather, and you can look it up through this by typing in Wolfram Alpha, and it's going to be the very first one that you click on, the first link. You can sign up if you'd like for Wolfram Alpha. You can see the sign up, you can go pro. Going pro, you do have to pay money when you sign up for the account. It'll be $5.49 a month if you pay annually, but if you want to sign up for monthly payments, it'll be $6.99 a month. $6.99, that is. If you pay, you get access to like favorites. It'll record your favorites. It'll record your history while working in this, and you can also change your setting preferences. So that's a couple of the things you can do. A couple other things that you can do with a Pro. You can see it says Go Pro here. You'll get all of this other stuff that'll come with it. You can actually input your own image. You can, let's go back to this. You can do your own data. It doesn't let you do that unless you do pay for it. But you can get other data. For instance, I'll kind of show you what uploading the data will provide for you. So I just use their sample, categories, currency data. And you can kind of see it's a table input. It'll show you all the values. It obviously skips some since there's 538 entries. It'll display them in different graphs. So you can see here a row data plot. You can see it through that, a histogram. You can also see it represented as a pie chart. So just a lot of variety of representations that are used. You can see an independent and dependent variable there. So just some neat things you can do with your own data if you want to pay for the account. So that's something that is very beneficial if you want to pay for it. I don't think as educators we need to pay for it. I think just showing students simple things such as y equals x plus 10, for instance. Just typing in this, and I don't have an account, I didn't sign up for one or pay, so this will show you what you can get through the free version of this, which I think is more than enough, but obviously there's a lot of cool things you can do if you'd like to pay for it. So it'll show you the input. This input up here, that's going to tell you what it's reading and what everything down here is going to show. So that's exactly what I want it to be, y equals x plus 10. It'll tell you what the geometric figure is, which is a line. Obviously we have an exponent of 1, and then it'll graph it for you. So this is one of the cool things, one of the things I like about this is it brings in the visual aspect that sometimes is lost in mathematics. So I'll go through all the variety of representations that Wolfram Alpha does show. It'll show an alternate form. It'll show the root of the equation up here, y equals x plus 10. It'll give you the domain, the range, and it'll also calculate the derivative. So let's go up here and see. You can kind of use this to show what if y equals x plus 5. So we're just going to change one of the terms in there from 10 to 5. And you can ask your students to notice what happened down here on the graph when x was equal to y, when y equals x plus 10, excuse me. So if we go y equals x plus 5, then we can go down here and look at the graph, and you can ask students if they notice anything different about the y equals x plus 10 graph and the y equals x plus 5 graph. Hopefully they see that the y-intercept, or where the line crosses the y-axis, is at 5 rather than 10. So they can make that connection visually through that this last term here must represent the y-intercept, since it goes across at 5 here, and in the instance when it was y equals x plus 10, and went across at 10 there. So they can kind of make that connection, and it'll last just a little bit longer because they're able to see as well as hear. So you can also do this with adding an exponent. Right away, I always like to put a space in there, so because I didn't want it to think the exponent was x and then to the power of 2 plus 5. However, you don't have to do that. It'll register this way. If you want it to be to the exponent of 2 plus 5, all you have to do is put parentheses on either side, and that will register it as the exponent. But we don't want that right now, so we won't do that. You can see the input is exactly what I wanted. It'll give you the geometric figure of a parabola instead, and it'll show the students how this isn't just a line anymore. This isn't a linear function. It actually is a quadratic function, and we can see the shape of the graph is different. So it goes back to the visual aspect. It also will show the complex roots. And here's another thing that you can use if you get the Pro. If you pay for it, you can get the step-by-step solution. I'll click on it, and it's going to ask me to go Pro, see all the steps, go Pro. So that'll be very helpful for students that, if they're struggling with some of the steps, they're not knowing how they got the wrong answer, or what they went about wrong. So that step-by-step solution will be perfect for those students, because it'll go obviously step by step and show how we come to these complex roots, how we solve this equation. So that'll be very helpful if you want to pay for it. That's something obviously we can work on in class, so without having to pay for it, you can put up the step-by-step solutions on the board or something like that. You don't have to. That's why I said you don't have to pay for this. It'll bring up enough things that you don't have to, with the free version, that you don't have to pay for it. All this stuff down here at the bottom, this is also, like, if we want to enlarge this graph, that's also going to be the GoPro. So that's something where it is helpful. Obviously, you're going to get more things if you pay for it, but we can still do a lot of things with the free version that I think are very useful regardless. We go down here and you can see the domain is still presented, but the derivative is 2x, so it'll still give you it'll calculate all derivatives. So that's helpful as well, and it'll give you a minimum as well for the graph above. This can also, a neat thing that you can also do with this is you can factor. It'll show you how to factor. You can go on and show students, staying along with this exponent thing. You can show students what happens when the exponent is negative. You can show students what happens when the exponent is between 0 and 1, and also when the exponent is the variable, and x. So you can go through, and obviously it'll show you the same thing, the different representations of the graph. So let's say if we want to factor something, for instance, factor x squared plus 6x plus 5. We can click that in and it'll compute it. It'll interpret what you want. You want to factor that equation, and it'll show you the results. Do you have to type in factor? You don't. That'll bring up exactly what you want, the factor, if you type in factor. But if you just type in this, you can go down, and in the alternative form, you can see x plus 5 and x plus 1. That's the factored form of this. So you don't have to type in factor. It'll still bring up the factorization, but you'll have to search for it in the alternate forms, rather than it just displaying exactly what it is. Kind of go in depth with what these things can show. Um, if we want to bring up an image, let's go to the lions. I'll just hit enter since I don't have the pro. It'll bring up the sample one like I showed before with the currency categories. Um, but something neat about this, it's still taking a little time to load the picture, but it'll show you the dimensions, the size, the aspect ratio, the color space. So this will be good. This is actually a good use for photographers. Um, but then it gets into these graphs here, brings it back to mathematics a little bit by bringing up a pie chart. Um, so you can see that the possible dominant colors it brings up. Just a lot of neat things that um, not a lot of people know Wolfram Alpha can do, but they can do a lot of really neat things while not only in mathematics but in other things. One of the best aspects of Wolfram Alpha that I find for educators is that it takes mathematical knowledge and it connects it to the real world. For instance, if your students are big baseball fans, let's just look up baseball and statistics. It'll bring up recommended searches as well, just like a Google would do or a Bing would do. And it'll tell you how to, if you want to get information about an MLB team, you can just type in the name of the team right up there. Rather than doing that, I'll just click right on here. That'll take me to the San Francisco Giants. We'll look up what the Giants, what Wolfram Alpha has, the information about the Giants. Taking a little bit of time. So it'll bring up the city that it's in, the league, the division. It'll give you the logo even, which is pretty neat. But it'll also show you like this home, away. It'll give you the winning percentage. So this would be very useful in a statistical course because you can ask students questions like, I know it gives you the winning percentage here, but you can maybe go over to the home and away records. You could ask students, for instance, how many games total were played at home and away, what their winning percentage was, what their losing percentage was. You could have them compare it to other teams. You could have students search any of their favorite teams so that it's more relatable to them. If you're going to do that, however, I would recommend obviously having the students write down what the home and away records were if you're going to ask those questions so that you can check to make sure their work is accurate, since if they're looking up different teams, their numbers are going to be different. So that's just a cool way that it kind of brings in different, it'll connect it to real life or interesting things for the students. For instance, if we just type in weather, we don't only have to go with mathematics. We can type in weather, and it'll bring up much like if you Google searched weather. But it'll go a little bit deeper. It'll tell you the temperature conditions, the wind speed, and it'll graph it for you. So you can see these graphs, and something that we don't need or that you can use, you can show the table. So if you're having a hard time reading this, or if students are having a hard time reading this, maybe they don't know, they aren't used to this type of high and low graph, you can see the minimum and maximum of these dates. So you'll see that the minimum was 69.8, the maximum being 86. If you want to, it'll just show the first three, but if you want to show more, you can show more like this. Just click the more or less button up here, whatever you would prefer, and you can keep going. It'll also switch it over to metric, but since we're in the US of A, we're going to stay with standard. And it'll go only to 2006, as you can see the more is gone. But you can compare and you can see for levels like 2011, you wouldn't be able to really recognize from the graph what those numbers are. So that's another use of representation, which is one of the biggest, the most useful things I would say for Wolfram Alpha is how it connects a variety of different representations so that students can make those different connections. Let's just go back. I'll show you just a couple more things non-math related that Wolfram Alpha provides. Down below here, the categories here that you can kind of use to help yourself through. Let's go one more thing about mathematics. If you're ever having a question about what you can type in, what Wolfram Alpha can calculate, you can go to here for just basic examples, or you can just type in the search bar and trial and error. But you can go through and see everything that Wolfram Alpha does. It'll solve an equation, it'll factor a polynomial, like I said earlier. It does things with calculus, calculate an integral, a derivative, like we saw earlier. So it'll do all these things, and it has it labeled here so that you can easily find what you're looking for. Kind of to go back, something not really math related, words and linguistics. You can go in here and it'll show you definitions of words if you want to find definitions, synonyms of words, acronyms. You can find anagrams of a word or phrases, which are really neat. Other things that it does, you can go through, you can see a wide variety. Just one last thing, it'll show history and people. It'll compare several people. For instance, let's see what it compares when we search these three people. It'll show, what they were, who they were, when they were born, where they were born, when they died, where they died. It brings up pictures of them, so you can connect. Maybe you don't know who Richard Feynman was, but then you see this picture and you're like, oh, I've seen his picture around. It'll give you a timeline, where they won their Nobel Prizes. If you want to know how tall Albert Einstein is, Wolfram Alpha is the place to go. So, just to wrap it up a little bit, as hopefully I've shown you, you can use Wolfram Alpha for a variety of things, but I think it's very useful in the mathematics classroom as a way to show different representations. You saw the variety of graphs, the alternate ways to write things, the factoring, the derivatives. It brings that visual aspect in, and you're also working with technology, which students enjoy. So as a whole, I think Wolfram Alpha is a very, very useful tool to use in the classroom. And if you use it a lot, I would recommend getting the GoPro because it's not very much per month and you can get a lot more. But if you're just using it every once in a while, the free aspect of it will cover everything that you need in class. Thank you guys. Hopefully you learned a lot.